Welcome to the recap and review of the tuned arc of Battle Angel Alita, comprising chapters 30 to 35. This is the start of the back half of the series, and starts our heroine on a journey after the status quo shattering events of the previous arc, while also setting up the events of the final major arc of the original series. Let's start with a quick recap. Before this, Alita had seemed to find a happy niche in the scrapyard, a settlement in the shadow of the floating city Zalem. After many troubles, she found happiness living above the Kansas bar. She played music by night and schooled the hunter warriors in basic combat techniques by day, enjoying every moment she got to spend with the people she loves. Yet a violent specter from her past, in the form of the vengeance-obsessed Zapan, came back into her life. He was seemingly killed, but returned after fusing with Alita's old berserker body, a nanomachine weapon. This was the work of one Professor Desti Nova, a mad scientist from Zalem. He's revived and given power to several individuals Alita had met in the past, this time to disastrous consequences. Alita's beloved Dr. Ito and several others she loved were killed as Zapan rampaged in the berserker body. Moore even blamed her for the destruction Zapan caused in his hunt for her. Yet hope was not lost. Nova offered Alita a way to kill Zapan, and he even promised to revive Ito right before he left the scrapyard with Ito's remains. Alita fought Zapan and, despite losing most of her body in the process, she emerged triumphant. I wish I could say this is where Alita's troubles ended, or that she was received with a hero's gratitude for her deeds, but that is far from the case. Let's start with the tuned arc. Sometime after Alita lost consciousness following her fight with Zapan, deep in the bowels of Factory 33, a computer squawks Alita's hunter-warrior identification code and name. Alita awakens to find someone has taken her inside, lying on a lumpy pile while a deckman looms over her. It brandishes the gun she used and demands to know if she denies being the one to use it. Dazed, Alita says that she defeated the Berserker Zapan and that it was a terrible battle. Unmoved, the functionary pronounces that, under factory law, possession of a firearm is a Class A offense, and there is only one punishment under factory law. Alita calls out in panic as she realizes the lumps she's lying on are the severed heads of criminals. The hatch behind her swings open, and they are all dumped into its depths. She shouts behind her, incredulous that she saved the city, and they can't even be bothered to give her a single compliment. The hatch slams shut behind her. When she next comes to, Alita finds herself in a sterile white room. Shockingly, she has a body again. This one even appears to be flesh and blood. She feels very tired and cold. Alita surmises that perhaps she's simply been having a very long dream. A screen set in the wall clicks on. A man with the symbol of Zalem citizenship on his forehead appears on the screen. Alita asks who he is, but he simply explains that he is contacting her directly from inside her dream from his location in Zalem. This space is an electronically generated space beamed directly into her mind. Alita is still confused, so the man explains that her real body is inside a factory facility. A visual appears displaying the current state of it. It isn't a pretty sight. The command to halt the disposer came barely in time to prevent her complete destruction. There's little left of her except her brain, but as it stands, her brain cells will die in only a few hours either way. She is dying in the real world. Alita shudders in the cold, her breath visible. Obviously distressed, she asks the man why he's showing her this and what he wants. He says he will spare her. He will have her Class A criminal status annulled. He will even give her a new body and a new chance at life. When Alita asks what he would expect in exchange for all that, The man chuckles and says she will work for the sake of Zalem. Her immediate response is that he is not going to turn her into a deckman, one of the tube-shaped cyborg servitors of the factory. He clarifies this would be a special duty, not something a deckman could do. A panel opens up in a wall, revealing a tray that extends out. On it is a familiar creature, Kimji. The man reveals that Kimji is a TR-55, an artificial life form created by Zalem. Thousands of them were sent down to the surface to recruit for their new project, and this one has been monitoring Alita for years now. The surface of the wall changes to reveal images of Alita in her motorball days, back when she first adopted Kimji. Alita seems heartbroken that her pet was just keeping tabs on her all this time. The man notes that she fought admirably, but to what result? He shows her images of Idacati saying she doesn't belong, the bartender from New Kansas calling her a pestilence, the man from the mob begging her to be a sacrifice. Alita clamps her hands over her ears against the onslaught of rejection, begging the man to stop, crying that she doesn't want to listen to this. More succinctly, she shouts that this sucks. The man ignores her outburst, explaining that until now she was like an exposed knife without a hand to fit it. They will become that hand now, giving her purpose and direction. He tells her to be their tool. Alita responds by smashing Kimji, the little spy. Abruptly, she starts laughing, even with tears still on her face. She says this is a dream. She doesn't believe him, because you can't trust a dream. Alita pulls her legs to her chest and says she isn't leaving this place. Hugging her knees tightly, she pronounces that she'll stay here forever. The man clasps his hands and tells Alita that dreams do not last forever. If she trusts him and has the courage to return to reality, she should open the yellow door and proceed outside. All this time, the room has been getting colder and colder, with frost collecting on the walls and on Alita's clothes. Her breath forms a fog around her, and she shivers as the frost starts forming on her hair and skin. Alita shudders in silence for a moment, then asks the man if, should she become a tool of Zalem, she'll be able to get stronger. He affirms. As the frost grows over the screen, the man explains that Alita will be codenamed Tuned Unit 1, the ultimate earthbound agent of Zalem. She will receive the greatest possible assistance from Zalem in terms of information, equipment, and maintenance. The current mission of Tuned Agents is to hunt an escaped Zalem scientist, Desti Nova. That gets Alita's attention. Her mind instantly goes to Ido, and Nova's assurance that he could and would bring the doctor back to life. Suddenly filled with a new life of her own, Alita stands up with a single overriding thought. She has to go see Ido. She approaches the door. The man smiles, remarking that beyond that door is the only place she will find her future. Alita places her hand on the door handle. As she turns it, she thinks of Ido, and to herself, she's decided to leave the room after all. Wherever this journey takes her, she doesn't know whether disaster awaits her or if this is simply sealing her eventual downfall. Alita opens the door and approaches a great white light. Alita just wants to see how far she can get on belief in herself, summoning up all the courage she has. The next chapter takes us to the outskirts of the scrapyard, where we see the border for the first time. Its most striking feature is the Hydro Wall, a defensive structure surrounding the scrapyard. It's an electromagnetic pump pushing a super viscous fluid 20 meters into the air. The sheer force would tear apart anyone that tries to pass through it, even hardened cyborgs. Thus, there are only two ways to enter: ground vehicles passing through a controlled checkpoint, or aboard the factory rail, a train system that carries cargo from farms and quarries controlled by the factory. This pressurized water reactor-driven locomotive is the lifeline for both Zalem and the scrapyard. That's why the local supervisor is so upset that the line has been subject to numerous raids this month by bandits. It's Vector. We haven't seen him since Arc 2, but it seems he's kept his job running logistics for Zalem in the scrapyard. He's looking quite disheveled despite this. These raids must be really stressing him out. His assistant reports that 5 caravans have been wiped out, including their mercenary guards. The total loss stands at 40 million chips. Vector complains that they used to have an arrangement with the bandits. They pay the toll and the bandits leave their shipments alone, but lately that has changed. A group called the Barjack Mobile Bandits showed up and started expanding their operations in the southern sector. They've apparently even stolen a factory train. Vector is stressed that they could muscle him out of his place in the market, but for all their efforts, the only thing they've been able to find out about Barjack's leader is the name Den. Vector orders his assistant to gather all the information they can on this Den so he can bring it to his next meeting, but Vector is suddenly surprised by something outside his window. He spies a familiar figure in the midst of the crowd passing below. When he takes off his sunglasses to look again, he can't find her anymore. She disappeared in the crowd, if she was ever even there at all. That's certainly what Vector tells himself, dismissing it as his eyes playing tricks on him. He reminds himself that the factory caught and disposed of Alita ages ago. He asks his assistant if there's anything else. The assistant mentions that they're having a problem with the train security. The guards are quitting because of all the stories circulating about Barjack, and they don't have enough to cover the trip. Vector orders her to double the payment to attract more guards while he negotiates with the factory for heavier firepower. We see this policy in action on the street. The recruiter offers 200,000 chips for 2 weeks of work, meals provided. They have 14 spots to fill on a first-come, first-served basis. This offer is appealing to some cyborg hunter warriors. It's a lot of money. Several wounded observers, seemingly past guards, remark that these hunter warriors have probably never fired a gun. Those bounty hunters seem tough in the scrapyard where firearms are illegal, but they'd be out of their depth against Barjack. One such hunter, a large and imposing cyborg, comes up to accept the offer, but all 14 spots have been filled. He doesn't see that as a problem, as he smacks the nearest would-be guard so hard he's sent sprawling across the street and crashes into a cart. The poor man is not about to let this go. He calls out to his attacker. Brushing himself off, the man asks if their parents ever taught these cyber folks from the city any manners. The cyborg is incredulous, but the man just says that if he thinks he can toss people out of line to cut them, some discipline is in order, even as blood drips down his face. The cyborg is not intimidated, asking if the man really liked the taste of his fist that much. He laughs at the man, wondering if he's drunk. This is reckless behavior from a naked runt like him. Naked here referring to his obvious lack of cyborg enhancement. The cyborg attacks, calling out "Organ Buster" as he launches a furious uppercut, but the man moves fast. He sidesteps the attack before launching his own open palm strike to the cyborg's head. He also launches a low kick at the back of the cyborg's knee. The cyborg falls flat, out for the count. The crowd is stunned at this man who just took down a cyborg barehanded. He isn't dead, just lightly concussed. The impressed recruiter rushes to get the man's name on a contract. He introduces himself with the rather odd name, Figure 4. Let's take a brief time out to take a closer look at how the factory system works. I have an image from the back of the volume to help with this. It's basically a diagram of how the factory system is laid out. The floating city Zalem is served by outlying farms in the wasteland, managed by deckmen cyborg servitors and protected from external threats by civilian vigilante guards. Food is plentiful, but cyborg parts, medical supplies, and doctors are in short supply. Supplies from the farms are transported by rail to one of 11 factory stations that ring the scrapyard, where all incoming shipments and travelers are subjected to rigorous customs checks. From there, civilian caravans transport goods destined for the businesses and people of the scrapyard, while factory-owned supplies are moved through underground transport tubes to factory complexes, where surface dweller workers process the imported food and materials into products destined for Zalem under the strict supervision of factory management. Those supplies are ultimately sent up the transport tubes to Zalem. The waste products from this process ultimately end up in the mountainous junk piles of the scrapyard, where some of it is refurbished or used as raw materials by the businesses of the scrapyard to make their own products. Let's return to the story. Sometime later, the factory train departs the scrapyard for the outlying areas, tearing across the barren landscape. Figure 4 is approached by one of his fellow guards. His name is Jorg, and he was very impressed by Figure's display of skill earlier. He's a veteran of this job and helps Figure sit with the gun on his back more comfortably. Figure complains about the awkward harness and gun, wondering if he can take it off when he needs to relieve himself. Jorg warns him not to. The rent-a-gun is part of the contract. If he attempts to forcefully remove the harness or move too far from the train, it will explode and kill him. That seems to make Figure question what he's signed up for. Jorg asks Figure if he's ever heard of Barjack. He vaguely knows that they're bandits that stole a train, but nothing else. Jorg explains that, according to rumor, Barjack found a stash of old but powerful weapons in a ruin, which is how they've been able to achieve so much. Most of the old guards got spooked and left. Figure asks why he stayed. Jorg digs out a photo and explains that he has a wife and child that live at Farm 22, the destination of this train. He's just hitching a ride home. That makes Figure smile and open up a bit to Jorg. He plans to head home after raising some cash. Figure is from a place out west across the mountains and along the sea. He came out here a year ago to see Zalem, but the city life didn't agree with him, so he's shipping out. Jorg laughs in agreement. That place is filled with cybers and ain't no home for people. Time passes. The sun approaches the horizon, and the train rumbles on. Figure heaves himself onto the roof of a car to watch the sunset. The outdoors suit him far better than sitting in a metal box. Just then, he hears music, of all things. Turning, he spies a girl sitting in an open hatch and playing a harmonica. Of course, we recognize her as Alita. She plays her music with a sad look in her eye. Figure is intrigued, but Jorg warns him not to mess with her. The fighter observes that she isn't wearing a rent-a-gun, so does that mean she isn't a mercenary like them? Jorg says that not even the head mercenary knows anything about her. She seems to have some unsavory connection to the factory, and they say that if you talk to her, you'll lose a year off your life. Well, Figure 4 isn't the type to let a rumor like that stop him from talking to a pretty girl. He picks the harmonica right out of her hands and insists he knows how to blow on one too. He doesn't, apparently, but Alita finds his fumbling amusing. Embarrassed, Figure insists he was better at it when he was a kid. Nonetheless, he's made a good impression, and Alita asks him what his story is. He introduces himself and asks for hers. She introduces herself as Alita and continues to play the harmonica. Figure notices she has a very large gun slung on her back, asking if she's gonna start a war. Alita abruptly pokes him in the forehead. With a calm expression, she tells him that if he gets closer to her, he'll die young. Figure is stunned, but quickly gets over it and pushes her finger aside. He tells her to stow the threats. Alita suddenly stands, looking up into the sky intensely as if someone had just captured the whole of her attention. It seems she's tapped into a surveillance drone watching the train from above, and it shows her a collection of bikes and buggies lying in wait further along the track. She confirms receipt of the intel and flips down to stick her head in the engine to talk to the head mercenary, warning him of the oncoming attack. The merc is reluctant to be pulled away from his magazine, and the deckman confirms that there's nothing on their radar. He tries to brush her off. She's having none of that, hanging right down in front of his face. There are 15 buggies and 18 bikes lying in ambush at 2 o'clock. Does he want to die? That does the trick. Up and down the train, the mercenaries' rent-a-guns start blaring. Red alert! Red alert! Safety released. All units prepare for battle. Figure and Jorg's guns release, and eyepieces slip into position over their eyes. A few trigger-happy fellows start shooting into the air immediately as the mercenaries clamber out of the cars looking for the bandits. Obligingly, the bandits rush over the ridge presently, closing with the train. The heavily armed highwaymen stream down the slope and turn to drive alongside. Alita notices something else and instantly orders the deckmen to stop the train. The head mercenary protests, but the deckman obeys her orders. The train wheels screech as metal grinds on metal. Too late. Ahead on the tracks, there's a bomb. It explodes, shredding the track and creating a hazard. Alita recognizes they won't be able to stop in time. They're going to derail. The train hits the gap and derails hard. The mercenaries are thrown from the cars as each one is tossed about in a massive pileup. The bandits swarm over the fallen cars. The leader rallies his men, ordering them to kill every last man they find. The wind is taken out of his sails a bit when the car next to him explodes in a ball of fire. Through the haze, Alita bares her teeth at the enemy with a wide-eyed expression. Elsewhere, Figure struggles to his feet, having been thrown about by the derailment, blood running down his face. As he gets his bearings, his rent-a-gun harness squawks at him, informing him that he's 20 meters from the train and to return to his station. Some of the other guards decide to make a run for it. They don't get far. Their harnesses detonate, reducing their upper halves to a fine mist instantly. Figure's harness warns him he'll be considered a deserter too if he doesn't return to the train in the next 25 seconds. He hurries, but Jorg calls to him for help. Figure wastes no time helping his new friend, pulling both of them back to the train. They're brought up short when a mercenary ahead of them has his head blown off. At 15 seconds to detonation, the leader of the bandits is bearing down on them, right between them and the train. The bandit shouts and levels his gun. Figure fires off a haphazard burst of his own as the bandit rides by. The lead bandit skids to a stop. He turns to face Figure, revealing a new bullet hole in his face, yet there is no blood. With a grin, he takes off his face. His head is covered by a shell, revealing a brain inside a glass housing. Unfortunately for Figure, his gun has chosen this moment to jam. With 10 seconds on the clock, the bandit hits the gas and charges down on Figure and Jorg. Figure scrambles to try and use Jorg's gun while the bandit takes careful aim. Suddenly, a massive gun rests on Figure's shoulder and a familiar voice orders him to stand still. Alita fires the gun and seemingly destroys Figure's hearing. The shot takes the bandit leader's bike, blowing it out from under him and sending him sprawling. Alita laughs and picks up both Figure and Jorg, tossing them back towards the train without ever taking her eyes off the bandit. She raises a handgun and fires repeatedly, shredding the bandit to pieces. His brain case slides to her feet, stopped by her foot. She smiles fiercely and tells the bandit that now he's going to tell her about his boss. Meanwhile, Figure thinks he might have wet himself after that close shave. When Figure and Jorg regain their feet, they look out to see a field of carnage stretched out before them, shocked that Alita seems to have destroyed all of the bandits single-handedly. Alita walks off with the bandit leader's head slung over her shoulder. He shouts at her to just kill him already, that if she doesn't, she'll rue the day she left the mighty Knucklehead alive. He will be her doom. Yes, his name really is Knucklehead. Alita simply snips a wire at the base of his casing, rendering the bandit mute and telling him to shut up for a bit. Just then, a scream rips out of the wreck of the train engine. The lead mercenary hops from the engine, shouting that the train's nuclear engine is going to explode. Heedless of his own beeping harness, he tears off for the hills. First an attack, and now a meltdown. Figure and Jorg rush to the engine and ask the deckmen to deactivate their harnesses so they can run. Unfortunately, it seems the derailment damaged their computer systems and now there's no way to deactivate the autolocks. The engine rumbles, York breaks down, and Figure calms himself. He just takes a seat and remarks that he has the worst luck, but there's not much you can do in the face of nuclear obliteration. Looking down, he sees Alita rolled up behind the wheel of a buggy. She looks up at him in silence. Figure tells her to go ahead and clear out of here. She's not one of the mercenaries, so she's not stuck here like them. Without a word, Alita ignores him and leaps up on the train car beside them. She lifts a hand, and several interface wires emerge from her fingers. Alita thrusts the hand into Yorg's harness, where the wires attach themselves to the mechanism. Incredulous, Figure shouts at her to give it up, it's going to explode. Alita just tosses Yorg's harness at him, safely detached from its wearer. Yorg and Figure are shocked. He asks her just who she is. With a faraway look in her eye, Alita just says, "Me? I made a deal with Mephistopheles." The engine explodes, but they are far away by then, watching the dust cloud as they speed away on Alita's ride. Yorg and Figure are downright giddy to be alive. Yorg thanks Alita for saving him, but she doesn't respond. Eventually they stop for the night, encamping under the stars. Figure and Yorg remark on shooting stars and UFOs. Figure wonders where Alita's gone off to, referring to her as Ol' Octopus Lips. Yorg advises him that if he's going to hit on her, he'd best save his breath and his life. Figure chucks a can at his head and chides the other man for still going on about that old wives' tale. Alita saved their lives. Standing atop a nearby rock formation, Alita gazes at the moon and receives a chewing out by her new boss. "Have you completely forgotten your tuned mission, A1? Far away in the floating city of Zalem, Ground Inspection Bureau Director Bigot Eisenberg reprimands Alita. He reminds her that her mission takes overriding priority. After tracking Desti Nova for years, they finally have a clue that Nova is without a doubt behind the Barjack mobile bandits. She must go apprehend him. Alita confirms the order. Figure then finds her, asking Alita if she wants to come down from there and eat. Alita gives a concerned look and declines. She says she has to leave right away and she won't be taking them with her, as they'd only slow her down. Figure sputters, demanding she repeat that and if she really expects him to walk across the wilderness alone carrying a wounded man. Unshaken, Alita says she does. Figure grits his teeth and drops the can of food he was eating. He flexes his muscles at Alita and says that he doesn't care if she's an angel of death or not. He doesn't take kindly to being overlooked like this. He demands Alita show him the best she's got. That's enough to put a smile on Alita's face. She remarks that he's quite feisty for a guy who just got his life saved. She's game. Alita discards her cloak. Her various pieces of equipment and armor clatter to the ground in short order. Figure laughs and warns her not to assume he's a pushover just because he isn't cyberized. He doesn't think she's realized what she's gotten herself into, so he'll show her what he can do. Figure picks up an unopened can and cracks the lid with his teeth. He tosses the meat can up into the air, then palm strikes it from below as it falls back to earth. The can bulges in the air, then the lid burst open from the hole he created earlier, sending the can flying like a missile. Indeed, that's what he calls this move, the canned missile. Alita, of course, just tilts her head to dodge it. She is actually surprised and a little impressed by this. What he just did is extremely similar to Herzahauen, a Panzerkunst technique she uses. That he can do it while being completely organic is impressive. Not knowing that she already understands the principle behind the move, Figure boasts that in his anti-cyber capo martial arts school, that's called a penetration move. He explains that most cyborgs have too much armor to be taken down barehanded by normal means, but his palm can send the impact through to the inside to ravage the soft, juicy brain. He's taken down 35 cyborgs like this so far, and he won't stop until he reaches 1,000. Alita is now actually a bit excited to fight him, but Director Eisenberg interrupts, demanding that she get a move on. If this guy's standing in the way, simply shoot him. Alita responds via her internal communication line, so Figure can't hear her. She tells them that even she needs to blow off some steam from time to time, so he should cut her some slack. Eisenberg asks if she has pent-up frustrations. Alita just says that she has a weakness for idiots like this guy. The director relents, allowing her 3 minutes to do as she likes. Figure, who can't hear this conversation, gets impatient. If she won't take the first move, he will. He surges forward with a palm strike, aiming to smack her in her mocking mouth. A palm strike lands, but not his. Alita moves around his attack effortlessly and hits him directly on the nose. He staggers and falls to a knee as his nose gushes blood, stunned by the pain and her speed. Alita laughs at him, and Figure admits he probably deserved that one, but now it's time to give his best. Realizing that he needs to close the distance before his attacks will be effective, Figure and Alita start circling one another. Finally, he closes enough to strike, but Alita smacks his attack aside. The impact disables Figure's arm. Alita launches a fist at his face. Figure is able to deflect, but she's able to turn that into another disabling strike to his other arm. Now she holds both his arms down. She raises her fist to his chin and asks if he's ready to give up. Instead, Figure drops to the ground and shouts, "Never!" He strikes at her feet with a sweeping kick. Alita hops out of the way easily, admitting that she's impressed by his tenacity. For the second time now, Figure says he'll have to show her his true power. Tenacity or not, this boy is extremely out of his depth, and I don't think he understands that at all. Back at the camp, Jorg is shivering, noting that the wind is kicking up and it looks like a storm might be in the making. He wonders what's taking Figure so long, hoping he isn't having fun with that devil woman. Well, he may be, but it definitely isn't what most people would call fun. Figure hits the ground, his face bloody and swollen. Standing above him, Alita asks why he won't just give up and admit defeat. He says he's sorry to inform her, but he can't be beaten. Alita begs to differ as she repeatedly punches and kicks him, sending him sprawling. Each time he simply gets up again, accusing her of being all talk. Alita is getting exasperated at this point, wondering if she'd have to kill him to beat him. However, he promptly collapses, having reached his limit. "What a cretin," she remarks. Sometime later, Figure wakes up covered in bandages next to Jorg and shouts that the fight isn't over yet. Jorg tells him that Alita is long gone, the heartless beast. She left them here in the desert with minimal food and water. Figure is angry, accusing Alita of running out on him. Alita drives away into the desert night, alone with her thoughts. She thinks about that weirdo, Figure 4. Of course, she's never really alone. Director Eisenberg asks if she had fun. Now that she's blown off steam, he orders her to get out of that sector. They have some very dangerous weather patterns showing up on the Doppler radar. The remnants of that nuclear steam explosion are hitting the west wind and forming a supercell. Alita asks if that means radioactive rain. The director clarifies, no. He's seeing rotation between the strong upward thrust of the wind and heavy rain. There's a cyclone brewing. We see exactly that, a massive column of wind tearing through the desert, and our hapless heroes are right in its path. Figure and Jorg cling to the rocks for fear of being swept away as the cyclone bears down upon them. Just then, heavy wheels skid to a stop beside them. Alita shouts at them to get in. Figure isn't done being stubborn, but at Jorg's pleading he caves. He'll decline her sympathy next time. Alita chastises him for picking now of all times to be stubborn and tells them to hold on tight as the cyclone whips up the desert around them into a maelstrom of sandblasting gales. Director Eisenberg is enraged. She defied his orders and risked danger for the lives of this surface trash. Alita isn't taking that, telling him that Zalemites aren't the only humans. She's been holding back her thoughts for quite a while, but now she's going to give him a piece of her mind. Who does he think makes it possible for him to live safe and secure up there? Who's growing his food, making his clothes, processing his waste, and shedding blood to fight for him? The director orders her to silence, but she ignores him, moved to tears now. "It's us surface dwellers," she says, and she's had enough of taking orders from a cold-blooded monster like him. Unfortunately, her lapse in attention costs her, and Alita doesn't notice a massive boulder the storm sent rolling until it's too late. The impact tosses their buggy into the air, and the wind catches them, carrying them off with the storm. Eisenberg calls out for A1, but the connection is lost. He slams his desk, asking how this happened. Sometime later, the buggy comes hurtling out of the sky, crashing to the ground with great force. Alita wakes up, not in the buggy, but hanging from a ruined skyscraper. She didn't get here by accident. Somebody has tied her up. Then she hears somebody playing a harmonica. Alita looks up to see Figure above. He explains that, when they came to, the storm had left the buggy precariously perched on this old high-rise. If they'd bailed out any later, all three of them would have fallen to their deaths. Figure turns to Jorg and does an impression of Alita, telling him if he gets close to her, he'll die young, remarking that they seem to have better luck than she thought. Alita doesn't have any patience for these antics. She asks him to stop joking around and pull her up. Jorg even joins in, asking Figure what he's so afraid of. Figure is angry. He shouts at Alita that, whoever she really is, he's tired of the way she helps people and abandons them whenever it strikes her fancy. He refuses to be her plaything. He's sure she could cut this wire, but even for a cyborg like her, a fall from this height would have dire consequences, so he wants her to have a think about what she's done. Alita is, of course, annoyed at this ungrateful punk, who has no idea what she's done for him. She tries to contact the director, but there's no signal. Alita asks Figure if Knucklehead, the bandit leader whose head she took, is there, but Figure says he wasn't in the car when they woke up. He must have fallen out at some point. At this point, Figure and Jorg just leave Alita hanging while they go explore this ruined, partially buried city. I don't think how the world ended up in this state is actually ever explained in the original series. You'll have to read the sequel series Last Order for that. The good news is that they've found a fresh water spring. They hope to find some buried canned food supplies, which Figure is convinced will still be edible. Their search goes on into the night, when they finally find a rat they hope to eat. Suddenly, the floor gives way beneath Figure's feet. Luck is still on their side, however, as he stumbles across an entire buried store of food supplies. Figure rushes to gather as much as he can, but Jorg is disconcerted. He notes that these cans are brand new. That would suggest that somebody stored these here recently and may be actively using this location as a supply cache. Back up in the high-rise, Alita is dozing in her bindings when Figure drops down next to her on a rope, asking her if she's feeling apologetic yet. He offers her a tin of corned beef, as even cybers must get hungry. Alita takes the moment to swallow her pride and apologizes. She tells him that he's within his rights to be mad at her, so she'll tell him the truth. Alita is a member of Tuned, a servant of Zalem on a top-secret mission and unable to disobey their orders. He asks if she's from Zalem, but she confirms that she is not. Alita recalls a passage she once read in an old book, that if you want to own a slave, you either buy him with money or save his life. She owes her life to Zalem. Sometimes she wonders why she was born in the first place. Figure asks her where she is from, if not Zalem. She says Mars, she thinks, though she doesn't have any memory of it. When asked where he's from, Figure says he's from a fishing village called Alhambra, a nice little place located in a last-century city that half sank into the water. Apparently, every 20 years or so, a great sea serpent wanders into their bay looking for seals. The whole village gets in their boats and competes to see who will land the first harpoon. The idea of the ocean seems to capture Alita's imagination. She says she'd like to see it someday, to which he remarks that her body would rust. That upsets her, but he offers to feed some food to her. She's surprised, but accepts gladly. And then he just eats the food himself. Alita does not take this teasing well. She kicks Figure in the head with both feet, calling him a jackass. That's enough to dislodge Figure from his rope, and he starts to fall. She catches him by wrapping her legs around his throat. Alita calls out to Jorg and tells him to pull her up right now or he'll never see Figure 4 alive again. He says he hears her clearly, but isn't sure what she expects an injured man like him to do. Alita realizes he has a point, but still demands he do something. The exchange is being observed from a distance. A large cyborg figure chuckles that they're sitting ducks. He's an odd one, with his face and presumably brain set in the middle of his chest rather than his head, and beside him is none other than Knucklehead, the bandit leader. The larger cyborg teases him, asking if these clowns really wiped out Knucklehead's entire group. They sit atop an armored transport of some kind, with an artillery cannon installed on top. The lead cyborg instructs his men to take careful aim, remarking that these fools made the mistake of wandering into the purview of the boiling metal relay base, home to the greatest combat troops in all of Barjack. He gives the command, "Fire!" The cannon roars and misses Alita and Figure by mere feet as they swing back and forth on the line. The building explodes behind them, sending all three of them flying. The bandits continue to fire as our trio tumbles through the air. Alita is able to get free of her bonds. Acting fast, she quickly lassos Figure and Jorg with the remaining rope and launches a molecular wire into the side of the building. She's able to slow their descent and bring them to a safe landing on the sands below. For a moment, they are stunned, but safe. Then the building behind them starts to rumble and topple over, right on top of them. The structure crashes to the ground in a cloud of dust. One of the bandits reports that they did it. They crushed them flat. That report was premature, as it turns out, as the dust clears and they see Alita holding up one of the concrete spars. Thankfully, a window landed on them. Alita shoves the concrete span away with one hand, where it crumbles into the rubble, and then whips out her sidearm, firing once. The shot is on point, blasting right through the lead cyborg's hand and blowing apart his head, or what you'd think was his head. This particular cyborg actually has his brain and face located in his torso. He's surprised her gun was able to penetrate the titanium-augmented armor of his palm from that distance. By her equipment and decisive counterattack reaction, he can tell she's no common train guard. He surmises that instead of the high-velocity rounds factory guards use as standard, this must be the more powerful high-safety ammunition, which included multiple steel flechettes with high stopping power. The other bandits open fire, and Alita leaps out of the way, pulling Jorg and Figure behind her. The leader says they cannot take this one lightly, recounting rumors of Zalem's Angel of Death. If this is her, they must use every possible measure to defeat her. The sergeant he's talking to takes his order and climbs down to a bay filled with human heads, living, sobbing human heads set on a screw-shaped implant. The sergeant says they're up as they beg for their mothers and call themselves scum. The heads quiet down as they are injected with adrenalizers and lowered into place on large armored bodies. The heads are screwed into place while the sergeant hypes them up, telling them they're the greatest soldiers in the galaxy and nothing can stop them. Doped up and hyped up, The screwhead soldiers charge out onto the sand. Knucklehead bows down before the colonel, begging for a chance at revenge. After a moment of consideration, he grants his wish. The colonel says he admires Knucklehead's determination and gives him command of a squad to avenge his defeat. He leads them out, heading straight in. The colonel immediately orders more troops to move up on the side so Knucklehead won't notice. The sergeant asks if he won't be waiting for Knucklehead's signal as agreed, but he's just using the other bandit as a decoy. If this is really Zalem's agent, he won't have a chance. The smallest men make the biggest show of their pride, he remarks. Back in the ruined city, Alita and the others have found some shelter in one of the buildings. She notes that the bombardment has stopped. Figure asks if these guys are barjack bandits too. Alita hasn't a clue. She's still got no contact from Zalem and has no information backup, and that's half the advantage of being tuned. All she knows is that they're about to engage in a battle of life and death, and that excites her. It does not excite Jorg, who starts wailing and crying about wanting to go home. That ticks her off. Alita raises her gun to pistol whip the coward and demand he shut up, but Figure intercedes. He interlocks his muscular arm with hers, bringing them face to face. He tells her to stop. He doesn't like her excitement right now. Does she really like killing that much? She says yes. She loves the moment when her body becomes not a machine, but a true part of her being. Her blood surges, her mind goes blank, trips out, and she has no time to think about her problems. Figure admits that he likes a fight, even more than a good meal, but he absolutely hates warfare, and especially women that take part in it. That seems to miff Alita, but she has nothing to say as they disengage. Figure goes on, explaining that Jorg has a wife and kid for him to worry about, so she should have some consideration. Unlike her, he has something to lose. Alita is taken aback and uncomfortable. She turns away and tries to brush it off, saying it's not her problem and she guesses she was just a gun in her previous life. In turning her head, though, she catches sight of a butterfly that's alighted on a ledge next to her. Down below, Knucklehead turns his head toward a sudden explosion. Alita has just blown away the section of wall she was leaning against. Because she hates dryad butterflies, a dislike inherited from the author of the manga, apparently. He finds them exceptionally creepy. In any case, despite Alita recognizing that was a mistake, their cover is blown and now the enemy knows where they are. Knucklehead gloats about their imminent demise, though his troops tell him to stop walking out in the open like someone that wants to get shot. He insists that it looks cooler this way. The screwheads dismiss him as an amateur. They rush ahead without him. The bandit soldiers take positions on either side of the first floor door, tossing in a grenade and charging in. They ascend the stairs to the correct floor, and the lead bites the pin off another grenade to repeat the maneuver when a hand smashes through the wall next to him. It grabs the hot grenade from his hand and shoves it into his mouth so hard it breaks teeth. The soldier stumbles back towards his fellows before exploding, shredding his torso. Alita darts out from between the dead soldier's legs. She punches straight through the face of the next soldier, obliterating him. His fellow turns and opens fire, but Alita has jumped into the air. She drops down onto the soldier and delivers a crushing strike, punching through the screwhead's helmet and pulping his head. Alita turns with a vicious smile and a look of blind obsession on her face, thinking that she's not there yet. As another soldier opens fire on her, Alita throws herself into the fight, craving more until everything is blank. Elsewhere, Figure and Jorg are taking advantage of Alita's distraction to escape the building through some type of defunct ventilation system. Jorg wants to scram as fast as possible, but Figure has chosen a fine moment to become philosophical. He's been thinking about freedom, a subject he's pondered through all his travels. How robust is his notion of freedom, anyway? He used to think solitude was a way to be free, but after seeing Alita's lone wolf thing, he's less sure that's true. Freedom is when you control the rudder of your own ship, he's decided, and so he's going to go back. Jorg is shocked and calls him a fool, saying there's nobody around to see him act like a hero. They're monsters. Jorg and Figure should just let them have their war and have no part of it. Figure just tells him to hide and climbs back into the vent. Jorg calls after him, but someone grabs him from behind and holds a knife to his throat. Meanwhile, Alita is still in her battle frenzy, drop-kicking a screwhead out the side of the building and falling with him to his fellows several stories down below. She falls with a helicopter kick that knocks the guns from her nearest foe's hands. Alita, however, is not unarmed, and she laughs as she unfolds the Damascus blade, seemingly converted into a giant butterfly knife. The screwheads take out knives, and Alita gives a bloodthirsty smile. She dodges their pitiful attacks and slices them apart with ease. The Damascus blade cuts through their armor like a hot knife through butter. She hardly seems to need the blade, to be honest, as a strong kick from her is enough to knock a chunk off their heads. Then, Knucklehead inserts himself into the situation, leveling a gun at her. He takes his shot, which Alita narrowly dodges. The shot kills a soldier behind her. Alita smiles, and Knucklehead realizes that at some point she threw a knife that has severed his trigger finger. The Damascus blade surges forth, carving through the air before him. He's shocked to watch his gun and hand fall to pieces in front of him. Alita laughs, but before she can deliver the final blow, the sands around her erupt as she comes under fire. She leaps back and turns to see the Colonel. His soldiers have rolled in to surround her, and he assures her that she'll be reduced to bolognese by the 30mm chain gun mounted on his vehicle if she moves an inch from that spot. Knucklehead stumbles forward in bewilderment. He's confused that the Colonel showed up even though he didn't call for backup, and then indignant that he was used as a decoy. Alita can only grit her teeth. Even she can't dodge that. The sergeant is outright salivating and trembling at the thought of shooting her, though the colonel wants her brain for the intelligence value. On one of the other vehicles, however, a barjack soldier is knocked from his perch, and the mounted minigun swivels to fire on the screwheads, obliterating two. Figure calls out to Alita to move now. She takes her chance, dropping smoke grenades. The chain gun fires, but misses. In a panic, the colonel orders his soldiers to fall back now that they've lost visual contact. Figure's vehicle spins and sprays bullets wildly, shredding several nearby screwheads. He says that Jorg might be right. Barjack and the factory might have nothing to do with him, but that doesn't mean he's willing to let them do as they will with Alita. The girl herself has another vicious smile on her face. She has some new toys to show off. She taps 3 dots on her armor, which light up, and a short distance away a mechanical spider digs itself out of the sand. It quickly deploys a tripwire, and when one of the screwheads takes a step too far, it explodes. That one's called Spidey, a special tuned armament made by Zalem to set up traps according to the terrain. The barjack ranks are in confusion now, thinking they're being attacked from the rear. Alita has more. As our heroine leaps into the fray, she opens up a container on her hip to release 5 tiny robots shaped like buzzing insects. Missile bees. They fly out ahead of her and quickly target the screwhead soldiers that had positioned themselves on nearby rooftops. They never knew what hit them. The missile bees came down from above and targeted their heads. The colonel gapes at the display, realizing that this is what they meant by the Angel of Death. Then his sergeant's head flies past him. Alita is right in front of him, Damascus blade in her hand and a look of berserk frenzy on her face. She moves to strike, but Jorg interposes himself between her and the colonel. Alita stops in surprise while Jorg explains that the colonel is actually somebody he knows. The colonel smiles and unloads his gun into Alita's midriff. Alita falls to the ground, and the colonel thanks Jorg, his friend, for the assistance. Our heroine can do nothing as an array of gun muzzles prompt her not to move. Figure is stunned by Jorg's betrayal and asks how he could do this. Jorg breaks out into an anxious sweat. He says he just settled for the safest option, and that he knows Figure probably thinks he's a coward and a traitor, but it's easy for Alita and Figure to think that way, being so tough and brave. What are weak little guys like him supposed to do? Freedom is only for the mighty. He'd rather submit to the collar than be free, Jorg cries out. Figure calls out to Jorg as the barjack soldiers turn their guns on him, tearing up the vehicle he's driving and the building behind him. It collapses with a great crash, and Alita calls out to Figure as he's lost in the rubble. We enter our penultimate chapter of this arc, the land of betrayal. Alita turns her anger on Jorg, calling him a traitor. Jorg is suitably terrified, but the colonel tells him to stand aside and raises what seems to be Alita's own rifle. Tears of rage start down our heroine's face, and despite the soldiers surrounding her, she launches herself into the air, intent on tearing them apart with her bare hands. The colonel fires, and Alita has both her feet blown right off. She bounces off the front of the colonel's car and falls to the ground. Alita screams as the soldiers quickly restrain her. Jorg is still in shock and Knucklehead is quiet, but the colonel is ready to wrap up this operation. He tells his soldiers to resupply as planned and prepare to move out. They go about it, resupplying fuel, water, and food. As they do so, Jorg washes down the taste of betrayal with some bourbon. He can't seem to get what Figure said to him out of his mind, that freedom is when you control the rudder to your own ship, and how Figure defended him. He looks at a picture of his family and apologizes to his friend. His drunken reminiscence is interrupted by the colonel, whom Jorg addresses as Basil. He says that Basil is a proud descendant of the Green Berets, which a note at the bottom of the page tells us was a unit of the American military, but in this time is remembered as a tribe of fierce warriors. Jorg says that he knew Basil ran his own mercenary group, but he was under the impression the man had been killed in a barjack attack 2 years ago. Basil just says that he followed the old adage, if you can't beat them, join them. He had assumed they were nothing but another group of silly bandits, but he realized his mistake when he met them and came face to face with the great ambitions of the barjack leader, Den. They will burn the factory flat, bring the sky to earth, throw off the yoke of Zalem to make a nation of their own for the surface dwellers. Jorg is gobsmacked by this idea, but Basil confirms that he's willing to give up his life for that goal. Meeting Jorg like this must be fate, so he suggests that Jorg join the cause. They're about to lead a raid on the factory's Farm 22. That brings Jorg up short. Farm 22 is where his family lives. Jorg stands on his wounded leg and addresses Basil, apparently having decided on something, though we don't get to see what just yet. Elsewhere, it seems like the colonel's troops are having fun ordering Knucklehead around, which he doesn't seem pleased by at all. Their resupply complete, Basil's troops roll out and make their way into the wasteland. The ruins are left silent once again as daylight fades to night, until the silence is broken by some shifting rubble and a hand shoots out to grab Jorg's bourbon. Figure 4 rises like a phoenix from the ashes. He knocks back that whiskey like a seasoned alcoholic, or maybe he's just in a lot of pain. With a smile and blood dripping down his face, he asserts that he is revived. The bullets were so scared of him they avoided him. Okay there, buddy. Later that night, the barjack soldiers have made camp for the evening. Alita has been thrown into a metal storage cabinet, still with her arms bound behind her and both her feet missing. Apparently, they've also pinned a dryad butterfly to the inside of the door to incapacitate her based on her phobias, which I guess worked. Basil hauls Alita up, telling her to rise and shine. The full interrogation will wait until they rejoin the rest of Barjack, but he has a few questions for her. Alita just says, 48 hours. She clarifies it's been 48 hours since she lost contact with Zalem. She suspects that means she's been cut loose by the tuned program. Alita doesn't have much hope at this point, knowing that Figure is dead and they will likely defile her brain before finally killing her. But if they're going to meet up with Barjack, then maybe there's a chance she can still find Ito. Alita starts spilling the beans on her mission, explaining that her primary mission is to capture the rogue Zalemite scientist Destinova. whom Basil confirms is Den's favorite, a strategist for Barjack. Alita explains that she's only in tune so that she can see Daisuke Ito, the man Nova took away from her. Basil mentions that Ito is a scientist working under Nova. That sends a shock through Alita. It seems Nova kept his word. Ito is alive. Suddenly, all Alita can think about is how badly she wants to see him again. She starts to cry, and thinks that she's willing to be a prisoner, even reduced only to a brain, if it means she can see Ito again. Alita actually starts sobbing, which Basil finds amusing, only for his henchman to take a bullet to the head right in front of him. The Colonel turns to gawk at Knucklehead holding a gun. He asks if the bandit has gone mad. Knucklehead just says that this is what Basil gets for humiliating him. Payback's a bitch. He unloads his gun right in Basil's face. The Colonel falls back, and Knucklehead turns his attention to Alita. Surprisingly, he announces that he's getting her out of here, but Alita protests. She'd just gotten used to the idea that she was going to see Ito again. She calls out his name, and the bandit punches her in the head, asking what's wrong with her. How could the angel of death that struck such terror in him be bawling like a little child? Elsewhere, the rest of the Colonel's men seem to have realized their officer has been shot. They move to deploy the screwhead soldiers, but upon injecting the adrenalizers they start foaming at the mouth. Knucklehead appears, revealing that he replaced the liquid in those syringes with cleaning fluid before he kills the hapless soldiers with a single shotgun blast. He proceeds outside with Alita leaning on his shoulder. More soldiers confront him, but as soon as they try to fire, their guns explode in their hands. Knucklehead reveals that he sabotaged all of the guns. I have to hand it to Knucklehead, he really thought this through and prepared accordingly. Knucklehead flips off the flaming remains of the Colonel's forces as he drives off in some sort of small truck with Alita lying prone in the back. She's a bit confused and questions why Knucklehead saved her. He responds by punching her in the face. She falls off the vehicle and tumbles down the sand dune. Knucklehead tells her not to be mistaken, he just didn't want those other scumbags to kill her first. He draws a gun and remarks that he's been looking forward to this. On to our final chapter, Rainmaker. The flames cast Knucklehead as a dark silhouette as he stands atop the dune. He says that Barjack was just a title, an easy banner to stand beneath. He isn't a true believer like Basil. All he really needs is to destroy machines and fire guns. He doesn't care who makes that possible. Knucklehead tosses Alita's Damascus blade towards her. It sinks into the sand nearby. Knucklehead loads his gun with a single large high-explosive round, which he claims is powerful enough to pierce 10 centimeters of armor, though he'll only have one shot. He beckons Alita to come and give him her best. Knucklehead claims that they are very much alike. He could sense a bolt of lightning when they first met. It feels good to lose control, doesn't it? She wants to be just another nameless beast racing on her own through the wilderness as far as she can go. Then let them venture forth together into that world of blank nothingness. Alita grips the sand and starts laughing. A perverse and vicious expression takes over her face as she takes the Damascus blade in her hand and begins to crawl up the dune, approaching Knucklehead. He encourages her, but then they both hear music. Both warriors pause. Knucklehead whirls around to face the source, only to receive a powerful palm strike to the dome. It's Figure. He looks at Knucklehead with disdain, asking if that's really the extent of his freedom. It's a shallow thing. Figure shouts that if the captain of the ship isn't going to take the rudder, then he doesn't need a brain. He tosses the harmonica he'd been playing into the air, winds up a strike, and delivers another blow to Knucklehead's brain case. This is the same deep penetration attack he showed Alita earlier. The bandit reels back as his cranial shell cracks, then explodes. His limp body falls to the sand. Alita, seemingly shocked out of her berserk state, looks up at Figure in surprise. He just remarks that he's gotten better on this harmonica. Tears well up in her eyes as she laughs and lets him know how happy she is that he's alive. Alita also drags him down to her level by a lock of hair. Ouch. He hands her the harmonica back, apologizing for how scratched up it's gotten, but she assures him that it's his now. Alita puts her hand on his arm and leans in to kiss him, which Figure awkwardly leans in to accept, only for them to be interrupted by a spray of gunfire that cuts right between them. Figure falls back. Two figures approach them. One looks like a screwhead soldier, and the other hovers in the air. It seems the rumors of Basil's demise were greatly exaggerated. This man has 9 lives. His brain case seems to be a separate unit that now peeks out from the top of his hovering body. He remarks on Knucklehead's death, that it's said that even insects have souls and feelings. It's the shame of a lifetime that he missed the warning signs in the bandit's demeanor. Not even a bug can be allowed to stand against their lofty ideals, so he orders the screwhead soldier to kill them. That soldier is none other than Jorg. Figure and Alita are shocked upon realizing this, but Jorg says nothing. Tears fall down his face as he raises his gun and turns on the Colonel. Basil's brain unit huddles inside its armored body, bemoaning yet another betrayal. He hits a button on a remote, and Jorg's body explodes, sending his head tumbling through the air. Enraged, Basil asks why Jorg doesn't get it. True freedom and equality can never come to the surface as long as Zalem floats above. Barjack is standing up for humanity and fighting a war for true progress. As he pontificates, Alita pulls up Knucklehead's body as a shield and takes hold of his gun, leveling the high-explosive round at Basil. The Colonel shouts that the revolution is not yet complete, and they should join the struggle as comrades, just as the shot obliterates him. Figure picks up Jorg's head, still barely alive. He begs Figure and Alita to forgive him, that he's too weak and no good. He doesn't even deserve to see his wife again. Figure embraces him in his last moments as Alita looks on sadly. The following morning, Jorg has apparently been buried with his gun as a marker, and a sandstorm rolls in. Figure and Alita try to drive through it on their tiny vehicle, though they can't really tell what direction they're going. Their vehicle doesn't survive the sandstorm, and so they must continue on foot. Rather, Figure must continue on foot while carrying Alita on his back. She doesn't have any feet at the moment. Unfortunately, they've run out of water. Alita's body actually starts steaming. Apparently a soft body, as she's currently using, is more vulnerable to overheating than organic bodies. In this context, a soft body is an artificial body constructed from the nanomolecular level using molecular engineering. That's according to a note at the bottom of the page. Alita tells Figure to leave her and go. She can't stand the thought of him dying while trying to carry her. He refuses, and she decides to tease him a bit, suggesting that he would be more free if he left her behind. Figure says he's also free to walk with the woman he loves on his back, free to go left, free to go right. If he collapses, then that was where he was fated to go. That being said, his throat is a bit dry, so maybe it's time to try a prayer. He takes out the harmonica and begins to play. Alita asks what the song is, and he says it's a song he learned from a rainmaker as a child. So Figure plays. But the sun beats down relentlessly, and even Figure's bravado can hold up only for so long. Eventually, he collapses, remarking that this is rough. It seems the prayer did not work. Alita tells him that it's fine, as she pulls herself over to him. Just as she's about to kiss him, a drop of water falls on Figure's forehead. A torrential downpour comes out of nowhere, sweeping across the surrounding dunes. The pair of them laugh in disbelief at the sudden rain. Then something strikes Alita on the head. A fish? It's raining fish, as observed in distant Zalem by Director Eisenberg and a bespectacled figure in a long coat. It seems that Alita is not as out of touch with Zalem as she thinks. The figure asks Eisenberg if he executed a weather manipulation. He denies it. Apparently he's been watching all along out of curiosity, to see how Alita's life would close the book on her stubborn rebelliousness. The other supposes that the director has lost and orders him to send rescue for them. Eisenberg addresses the other man as Dr. Russell, asking him if he believes in fate and miracles. The doctor looks at him askance and says of course he does, as Alita and Figure laugh in the nigh miraculous rain of water and fish in the desert. Thus closes the Tuned arc. If that last sequence confused you at all, it's actually a real phenomenon. If a waterspout or tornado passes over a body of water, it can suck up fish and water only for both to rain down when the wind speed subsides. Those usually only happen somewhere in the vicinity of a body of water, I think, so it suggests that Alita and Figure are near some oasis, river, or even the ocean. They're probably closer to safety than they think. Now to go into my thoughts about the arc, I think it's pretty good for what it is, which is a transitional story that's really more of a preamble to the longer Barjack Rebellion arc that comes after it. It's very self-contained in terms of the immediate antagonists of Knucklehead and Basil, but a lot of time is also given to introducing Barjack as a force that will propel the plot in the future. In general, it introduces a very different phase of the series' storytelling. Even in the action, without losing touch with the martial arts side of things, we see a lot more guns, explosives, and technical gadgets coming to the forefront compared to prior arcs. We've left the relatively controlled environment of the scrapyard for a wilder place without rules. Alita is also no longer working with scrapped and salvaged goods. She's got Zalem backing to make her deadlier than ever. Alita is also much more vicious than we've seen her before. Her introduction as Zalem's enigmatic agent of death is very intriguing, but it gradually reveals just how damaged she's become by her experiences. This is Alita at her lowest point. Almost all of her human connections were violently stripped away from her in a single day, leaving her only with a tenuous hope of finding Ito someday. To even pursue that hope, she's had to become a killer for Zalem. It doesn't directly say this in the text of this arc, but I know from future chapters that it's been 10 years since that day. For 10 years she's been hunting and killing for Zalem in the vain hope that she'll find Nova, not knowing if he's even fulfilled his promise to revive Ito. It's no wonder that she's dealt with all this by trying to lose herself in the violence. She's tumbled into a dark, hopeless abyss, deprived of love and forgetting her ideals. It's no coincidence that Alita's foil in this story is the most pathetic character, Knucklehead. Knucklehead may nominally be part of Barjack, but he doesn't actually believe in it any more than Alita believes in working for Zalem. He's a shallow creature of violence without loyalty or ideals, craving nothing more than the next violent struggle. Figure being the one to defeat Knucklehead is very symbolic of his role in Alita's development. It's through his willingness to confront Alita over her callous behavior and their growing relationship that Alita is able to reconnect with her humanity, breaking her out of her spiral of despair. Speaking of Figure, I've always had very mixed feelings about him. Part of that doesn't have much to do with this arc, but the fact that he doesn't actually have a huge role in the rest of the series despite being such a big part of Alita's journey here. Pardon the minor spoiler. As it is, he shows up like the protagonist of an entirely different post-apocalyptic martial arts story, but nobody told him that the power scales don't match up, so he acts like more of a badass than is probably warranted. I don't dislike him, but the slightly buffoonish bravado thing just isn't the type of character I usually vibe with. Figure's arc is about his changing understanding of freedom, coming to think being on your own isn't enough. You also have to make your own choices and not just react to danger. That's his idea of freedom, with his foil being Colonel Basil, who takes that view in a different direction. He rejects freedom in the way the world currently is, and is willing to fight in order to bring about a supposedly more free and equal world, but he tramples people underfoot and doesn't care who he hurts in pursuit of that goal. He sacrifices principle for expedience, with lofty goals as justification. Figure holds a view of freedom that is essentially about being true to oneself in one's actions, while Basil puts principle aside while claiming it as a goal. Caught between them in this conflict is Jorg, whose anguish and fear over what he should do as a powerless person is surprisingly poignant. He's a little annoying in the early parts, but he actually grew on me quite a bit in the end, as he decided to live like Figure even if it kills him. In his own right, I actually enjoyed Basil as a fairly intelligent and competent antagonist. All in all, it's a fun arc that hints at more interesting stories to come. If I have any criticism, I would have liked to see those 10 years Alita spent working for Zalem expanded upon a bit more. We mostly get implications, but I would have liked that brought into the fore in terms of the sorts of things she was being made to do and her decline into despair. There's a short story I may talk about one day that shows one instance of that, but I would have liked more here. That's all I have today. If you want to find out how Alita will fare in her battle against Barjack and Professor Nova, keep an eye out for my next video tackling the Barjack Rebellion. Until then, I hope you have a nice day.